Otani G.
And welcome into episode 33 here, The Grind on Sports. I'm Wayne Kaiser alongside Ben Metz, and we are ready to grind it out here. March Madness is still going wide open, and the reason we're happy is because Tennessee's still alive and well in the men's bracket, so pretty excited about that. Going to talk about that in a lot of good detail as far as what's gotten us to the round of 16 there in the men's bracket. And then, of course, we'll talk Tennessee baseball was able to clinch a series in SEC play, kind of get back to 1-1 in series, that is, there in Tennessee baseball. But do not want to kind of miss on the big topics of the week. Ultimately, Lady Vols bounced in the round of 32, lost to the hands of North Carolina State. We'll talk about how that looked, how that felt, and then ultimately what the next steps could, should, and might be for the Lady Vols, the Big Orange on the lady side. And then we want to talk about Shohei Ohtani and the scandal, the theft, the broken friendship, it's according to which outlet you're following to know what the storyline is per se with Shohei Ohtani, the $700 million man. So, Ben, let's jump right in with Ohtani. To me, I don't know. This is Pete Rose with a bigger price tag. This is a lot of things. I've TikToked and X, also known as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I've tried to get my hands on as many different angles of this story that I can find, and honestly, Ben, it's smoke and mirrors all the way around. I think. I don't want to say that Ohtani was just flat out the gambler, but I have it hard to believe, again, with the level of money that we're talking. This isn't a $20 bet. This isn't a $100 bet. We're talking a loss of $4.5 million. It's hard for me to believe a guy can just lose $4.5 million and not know it out of his account.
Yeah, the way this story broke, when there's smoke, there's fire, is the saying that comes to mind for me. Too many people coming forward with different stories, basically. And it all starts with Mizuhara, the interpreter for the last 12 or so years for Shohei Ohtani. Initially coming out, it was reported that Ohtani was paying off a debt, and it was a small amount. It was 2 payments of $500K to pay off a debt for a longtime friend, a childhood friend. Then
wouldn't you love for $500K to be a small payment?
Yeah. But then it comes out that there's, I think they're traveling after an exhibition game. Story breaks to the LA Dodgers, and then all of a sudden the LA Dodgers say, hey, we can't be saying these types of things. We got to separate ourselves from the interpreter. And then he changes his story and basically says that it was a large amount stolen from his account. So very interesting storylines, and each day new information is coming out, and it doesn't look good for Shohei, Wayno.
Well, I don't think it looks good for Major League Baseball because they're as much as Shohei is probably, being painted in a bad light as much as it could negatively impact him historically. I think long story short, he could go back to Japan and make a really good living. Can he make $700 million? Probably not. But can he play internationally and still make a great living just based on what he was able to do in Major League Baseball? I think so. But I think the bigger impact and the bigger question mark lies with Rob Manfred and Major League Baseball, because ultimately they've basically died on a hill for the better part of about 40 years that Pete Rose, gambling on baseball, don't pass go, don't collect $200, and that's $200 back then. But Shohei Ohtani, the show pony, if you will, for Major League Baseball right now, the best thing coming and going, pitching or hitting, and now he's at fault or possibly in line to possibly be in the crosshairs of a big time fine, ban, whatever you say it. And I think that's there to be had. But ultimately, I think Major League Baseball is sitting here going, do you know how much what kind of negative impact that's going to have to merchandise sales, Dodgers ticket sales, even though they have a star-studded lineup they're going to put butts in seats at Dodger Stadium, but people will boycott. I mean, people will literally not watch Dodger baseball if certain things unfold in a manner that the purists of the sport don't necessarily agree with. So I think they're in a pickle. I think it's a big deal. You can say it a lot of different ways, but I think Major League Baseball is puckering a lot more than Shohei Ohtani is.
Yeah, and Major League Baseball is coming out and they're trying to paint this Picasso, and the one point that you're going to hear from this outlet that hasn't come from any other outlet that I know of, legal to gamble in the state of California. Okay, so it is not legal to gamble in the state of California. You can paint this picture and make Shohei Ohtani this great baseball player. He's a player for the fans, whatever have you. Whether it's the story that he knew his friend was gambling and he was trying to pay off a debt, or he gambled himself and was trying to cover with his interpreter. The bottom line is Shohei Ohtani did something wrong, and he'll have to observe a consequence and may experience some criminal charges of some kind, because again, it's illegal in the state of California to gamble.
I think that's a great point. Another point that nobody's really speaking to, and maybe he doesn't have a financial advisor or an accountant or anything like that, but I find it very difficult, even if he stole the routing number or what the code to his account or whatever that looks like. I find it hard to believe that $4.5 million can just move quickly and easily. And also, we talked about it in another outlet. I'll go ahead and just give it his name because everybody knows Clay Travis. I follow him. You should follow him. There's a lot of junk that might come out of his outlet too. But in this situation, he put pretty cool light on this subject in the fact that he said, if you lose $4.5 million, how much are you gambling? Because he said even a poor gambler, and he pointed at himself, and I'll point at myself, he says they'll win at about a 40% click. If you literally just go with the bookie, go with the odds, you're going to win at like a 40% click minimum. He said, so you're talking about a gambler who possibly has won tens of millions of dollars. And you're going to say that all of a sudden, hey, I know this is my first time. I'm just going to go all in, $4.5 million. No, this is a gambler that is either dug a hole that he had to put a big wad of money on to get out of the hole, or this is a guy who is traditionally throwing around $1 million, $2 million on a bet on a given weekend, and so 4.5 didn't seem to flush out. And if you're kind of going, you jumped right into it, I don't know what you're talking about. Basically, there was a bookie, and I think his last name's Moyer, and he kind of was floating around Shohei Ohtani's name, saying that he was connected with him, this and that. Long story short, the investigation showed that he wasn't directly connected, but that there was a connection with the interpreter. And that's where the original story, which I think that may be the straw that breaks the camel's back, is that this was the original. The words originally was Shohei paid off a big debt. Now, if it circled back and lost in translation, it was a theft. I think it can be that, but I think they're going to pay the piper just because outlets to the media and different things like that. There's a lot of different channels that you have to go through to get there. And so I don't know that was the wrong story. I just think it's not what the Dodgers wanted to be said. So to me, I think Clay Travis paints it really well. You paint it really well with the no gambling in California. This guy's not taking a fall where he loses his job, where he, doesn't work in baseball anymore. He's got to go back to Japan, whatever that looks like. We're not talking just an extradition situation. We're talking about multiple years in prison, multiple felonies, big disgrace to the culture that is Japanese culture. To me, if this guy takes the fall, I'm going to say when he gets out of prison, he's going to be taken care of by whoever does this. I just don't foresee this being something that you just take lightly. But he has the interpreter has been fired by the Dodgers. Shohei Ohtani is still employed by the LA Dodgers, and so maybe they know more than we do.
Yeah, and my last point to add to that, Wayne, is this is going to have a ripple effect on the game of baseball because there are so many athletes that participate for Major League Baseball and the Players Union, and they're all covered under that CBA, that Section 21. And that conduct of that Section 21 of that MLB rulebook specifically states about gambling to protect the integrity of the game. So whether you as a fan think, well, it was Ohtani's interpreter or it was Ohtani utilizing his interpreter, it is going to have a ripple effect on how these players play the game and how they approach gambling in the future. So really going to be interesting to see what Manfred does in the upcoming days.
Oh yeah, I think how this is handled is either going to positively impact baseball just based on the purity still lies in Major League Baseball, or frankly, it's going to create a path to where players can say, I just need to find a friend. We don't have to have an interpreter. It can be a bodyguard. It could be a financial advisor. Oh, he stole my money. If you catch me, he stole my money.
It could be the Uber driver, buddy.
Yeah. Here's the thing, and you can ask Mr. Metz. Always take your second copy of your receipt from any restaurant because that can take you for all you're worth. But anyway, so there's a lot to come from this Shohei Ohtani situation. There's a lot that we didn't know yesterday that maybe we found out a little bit more today. Hopefully, we've been able to shed a little light on that. And then I think in the coming days, it's just going to completely unfold because I think Manfred's got to almost have a decision by opening day. We're 4 days away from opening day?
Well, effectively tomorrow. Some games are coming out tomorrow, which is some are playing tomorrow. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he's got to make a decision pretty quick before he starts.
At least to say, because ultimately, if it's anything like, college football and kind of the eligible versus not eligible, I don't think the Dodgers want to take some wiped away wins because he was on the field.
Yeah, and this is a different time than back when Pete Rose got caught and Shoeless Joe Jackson. There's a lot of electronic media out there and data storage that you can't hide this information, whether it be Boyer's accounts or Shohei Ohtani's communication with Boyer. But it'll all come out in the upcoming days, so just sit back and watch.
Yeah, I think we'll have a lot more information by next week's episode. No doubt about it. The next one that we'll hit on, and this one's just a hot button topic here in our region, in our town. It's the Lady Vols. Lady Vols bounced in the round of 32, defeated by North Carolina State. And really, a lot of people were like, well, they came back from 20 down, but then they were 20 down. This is a situation where you've got a program that have seen the heights of almost beating South Carolina a couple times. Keyword almost. Did not beat them either time. Then defeated and knocked out, bounced in the round of 32. People who aren't familiar with Lady Vols basketball or the tradition that is Pat Summitt Lady Vols basketball, a lot of people would be like, you're talking about the Lady Vols that have made every single tournament that's ever been had for the women's game? Yeah, that's who I'm talking about. You're talking about the one who, won X number of games, was this seed in the tournament, da-da-da-da-da. Yes, if you literally Google Lady Vols basketball, your snapshot's not going to be – it's going to be what a lot of programs would want, right? It's going to be what a lot of programs would hope to have in their ladies basketball game. But we're not everybody. I would argue that ladies basketball, women's basketball wasn't invented at Tennessee, but it was cemented at Tennessee. What Pat Summitt did to the game, what she was able to build, how she made it important for women to play in the same arena as men. I remember when Thompson Bowling Arena was built, they talked about, I wasn't there, but my father-in-law shares a story that they wanted the women to still play in Stokely. They said, hey, that facility will house any number of fans you're going to have. That's you get your own place. Pat Summitt said, no, if we're going to have the cutting edge technology, we're going to have the greatest this or that, put me and Thompson Bowling with the men. And it proved to be a really good move because in those 90s, three-peat national championship years, I mean, they had the upper deck open for ladies basketball. It was something you didn't see around the country. If you look at where UConn plays women's basketball, South Carolina plays women's basketball, LSU plays women's basketball, it is not the feature that is Thompson-Boling Arena. So anyway, I say all that to say good enough's not good enough at Tennessee. And right now, Kelly Harper gives us good enough. Kelly Harper gets us to the tournament. Give her that. She wins 20-plus games. I'll give her that. But what she doesn't do and consistently underachieves that is beating top 25 teams, winning close games, and beating teams you're not supposed to. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. I can oversimplify it a lot, and I typically do because ultimately I have an opinion and I don't steer from it very often. But it's very similar to Tennessee football, and I think this will relate to a lot of people. I don't think we're ever going to grade Tennessee football on whether they beat Vanderbilt's, whether they beat Kentucky's, or whether they beat, I don't know. Give me anybody, any non-conference game. Okay, how about that? You don't grade Tennessee football on a level of good to great or even very good on those games. You grade Tennessee against Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. Mm-hmm. The way we perform against the big boys. And so in ladies basketball, the big girls are South Carolina, Stanford, Notre Dame on most years, back when Mulkey was there, Baylor, but now LSU, and UConn. Well, fortunately for us, unfortunately for Kelly Harper, we got to experience a good number of those. Mm-hmm. And we didn't beat any of them.
Yeah.
I think you have a stat. I think we've played 19 top 25 teams here very recently. Kelly's beat 2 of them.
Yeah.
And I don't even know who those 2 are. They were probably like a Florida or an Alabama that were ranked when they really shouldn't have been. Mm-hmm. And so to me, and John Adams put it out there, the program may have deteriorated. Wow, that's a word. Deteriorated farther from Holly Warlick to Kelly Harper than it did from Pat Summitt to Holly Warlick. And I think that's knowing where we were 5 years ago and felt like we had to make a change to hire or Kelly Harper. To me, it's disheartening at a massive level that the Tennessee program, even though we can still recruit, we still put probably 13 to 15,000 people in Thompson-Boling Arena for weekend home games, and we can't win. We can't get to the round of 16. I don't get it.
Yeah, you talked about it. Holly Warlick, 72% win percentage. Kelly Harper Jolly, 60% win percentage. We used to go with Holly Warlick to the Elite Eight. It was a guarantee with Summit. You go to the Sweet 16, you go to the Elite Eight. It was just known we'd be playing there. Holly Warlick gets us there 3 times. We have yet to get there with Kelly. 5 years of coaching, 2 Sweet 16s, 2 second-round appearances. So I always look at it from this perspective. I hope, and I think Danny White does this kind of evaluation at some point. I think he looks at where the program has been historically prior to the coach, where the program is currently with the coach, and what is the future outlook for the coach and the program. So we know where the program has been, whether it be with Holly Warlick, whether it be with Pat Summitt. We know where it's been. It was in good condition, and Holly had a really bad last year with the program when we lost in the first round of the tournament. It as well was a 13-loss season, just like Kelly's 13-loss season. So it was trending down, and Phil Fulmer made that change and got Kelly to come over. So Kelly came in, and Kelly has had some issues in the current state of the program. And you covered on a lot of those things. The poor performances against the top 25 teams, the poor performances in the tournament. But I also think that we need to look at the future of the program. One key stat, and we've talked about it before in the show, but I want to give you a perspective that I have that I looked at this evening. So next year, 24-25, she has 1 recruit. And we've said that before. She has 1 recruit and 8 open roster spots, okay? So you're out there thinking, okay, you got one recruit, 8 open roster spots. What does that mean to college basketball? Well, let's take a look at UConn, okay? Let's take a look at UConn and what they've got. Well, in November, UConn signed 2 signees, and they've got a spot for next season. So they got 2 people. They only have 1 open roster spot. 25-26. Let's go out to 25-26. Kelly Harper has 1 commit and 11 openings. So come that season, she has 11 open roster spots and 1 commit. UConn has 2 commits, 2 open roster spots. So there is no recruiting going on. Kelly is sitting back waiting for the portal and she's going to fill roster spots, try to build a culture with a mixed podge of people that have come from different universities. Whereas the winners out there are attacking a long-term plan, and they're out there recruiting. So I'm heavily concerned about her lack of recruiting and looking out for the future of this program. And we're losing some big players next year. And for her to rely on a freshman and Tanya Boyd that really hasn't proven anything, now that we're losing Powell, it's going to be interesting.
Well, and another thing is when you go to the portal, I think that works if you're going to play, pickup tournaments, AAU level, where you run different places every weekend and you kind of do your own thing. But when you're trying to build continuity, when you're trying to make a long season work, certain things you shouldn't have to teach someone, like where's the locker room, like where's your classes located, those different things that, there needs to be a core. I understand, the boys team has done it. We add some play pretties with Dalton Connect. We add guys like, what's his name? Dillion or whatever. We've added some pieces, but we had the core of Triple J, Vescovy, Ziegler that can say, guys, it's fine. After practice, I'll show you where to go. And we'll get this worked out. Go try this pizza. Go try this. Da 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 da. I've been here for 4 years. Some of them been here for about 7 years. But when everybody on your roster is new from another school, yeah, they're the upperclassmen, but they don't know anything. And you're a freshman. You're sitting here going, "Hey, where do I go if I need to buy food?" Oh, I don't know. I just go to the cafeteria. Mm-hmm. And so almost instantly your culture's deteriorating, right? And then another thing is, I don't know. There's a lot of people that know me, know my stance on the portal. There's benefits, there's cons. I probably am more against it than I'm for it, but to me, you only get ring chasers out of the portal. Commitment to the program is not coming out of the portal. People would be like, well, what about Brew McCoy? Well, Brew McCoy came to us as a sophomore, so it's a little different scenario. We've had him for a few years. This person comes to us. If you're a upperclassman, if you're a junior or senior, you're a ring chaser. You're wanting to get NBA, NFL ready, whatever that looks like, and you're wanting to get out of here. Like that's the situation. Billy Amick, I love him. I think he's a great ball player for Tennessee baseball. Billy Amick didn't come here because Tennessee was just the beautiful landscape. They have really good this, they have really good that, and their campus is on the Tennessee River. No, he came to Tennessee because they were preseason number 5 team, had a really good shot at getting back to Omaha, and he understood that Tony Vitello's only going to smack that door a couple times before he can knock it down. And so I think he understands that there's opportunity to win a championship here. The difference is when you're Kelly Harper and you've yet to make an Elite 8 appearance and you've got the top tier transfer people out there, I just don't know that they're going to sit here and go, you know what? I could go to UConn. I could go to South Carolina. I could go to Stanford. I could go to pick your other school, or I could go to Tennessee. They haven't made it to an Elite 8 in a long time. People probably aren't going to remember me if I go there because I'm going to be overshadowed by the history of Candace Parker and all the Meeks and even recently, some of the players that's come through this program. So you know what? I'm going to go over here. I'm going to be a superstar. They'll retire my jersey at that school. And if we don't win, we don't win, but I may have a better shot. And then now here's the elephant in the room, Ben. Kelly's becoming a lame duck coach.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is going to want to come here from the portal because they're like, and I got 3 years eligibility left. I want to be there. Or I got 2 years left. I can't say that my coach gets fired going into my senior year. And so I guess the nucleus that she's built based on that recruiting prowess may bury the program for a few years. And you know, a lot of people's like, well, what do you mean? She makes the tournament. That's a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it the way I feel. It's a big deal in the men's game to make the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, there's not. I'm just speaking freely, and it's not anything. It's not men versus female. It's just where the game is in one dynamic versus the other. I don't think there's 64 really good women's programs right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's 64 good teams, and I think there's about a dozen great teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so when that is the dynamic in the ladies' game, making the tournament is not a measuring stick. Tennessee, I would say even to this year, if you looked at who bought tickets to the Raleigh bracket, the little Raleigh section of the round of 64, I would argue that we had our line share. You know what I'm saying? There was, I believe, 8 sites for the round of 64, 8 teams in each.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that out of those 8 teams, we probably held 25% of the overall ticket sales. We still travel enough to make it relative for them to put you in their bracket. And so to me, the floor is here. And it just pardon me because I have family that renovates houses and stuff. This is a classic situation of, oh, you've renovated. You've added 9-foot ceilings. No, the floor just dropped 2 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly Harper's dropped the floor 2 foot.
Yep.
So don't say you added 9-foot ceilings. No, our bottom's just a lot lower than it's been in a long time.
Yeah, and there's no plan to fix the ceilings or to fix the floor. and like I said, in 25 and 26, there's 15 roster spots, and 11 of them are open. And then
don't get me wrong, I'm sure she's talking to people. But talking's not commitments. Commitments isn't letters of intent, and letters of intent ain't on campus.
Yeah, and going back to your point, when you one freshman, whereas Pat Summer get those 5 stars, she'd get 5 or 6 5-stars per class, and they'd come in as freshmen, and they'd all stay in the same dorm hall together, and they'd all eat breakfast and lunch together and practice and shoot around. Well, guess what? You got 1 freshman coming back next year. You got 1 freshman. And how many players on the team? How many players on the team are going to receive that freshman and welcome her to that culture when you're bringing in 8 or 9 other girls from different, upperclassmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors that have played elsewhere, been redshirted, and so, like I said, to me, I look at the current state of the program, and you covered it very well, Wayne. The current state of the program, it's in shambles. The floor's falling apart. The ceiling's about to bow and come down on top of us. And there's absolutely no plan for next season or the season after to fix the roof, to fix the floor, get us back to where we want to be. And, I love what Kelly did for us as a player, but sometimes players don't make good coaches. And I also think, and I know I brought this up, but I'm going to go ahead and call out the elephant in the room, and you know where I'm about to go.
Yeah.
John Harper has been with her. Her husband has been with her from West Carolina, NC State, Missouri State. He's been fired along with her at West Carolina and NC State. By the way, the same team we lost to in the NCAA tournament. So she's not willing to make a change on her bench when things don't go the way that Tennessee fans want to see it go. She's going to be stubborn, and she's going to keep the coaching staff that she has and hope for a different result. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't disagree, man. I think it's one of those situations. Nobody wants to fire their own. Danny White has a lot of irons out there in renovating Neyland Stadium, making sure that the men's basketball program, that is, continues to kind of move the needle there, possibly making a deep run, hopefully this next weekend. Baseball, renovating Lindsey Nelson Stadium. football, continuing to renovate the Thompson Center and what that looks like. So I understand that it may not be priority one. And I understand that at some rate, is it worth the cost that's going to be incurred with firing a coaching staff, buying everybody out, and then ultimately putting together a package to go get somebody that's not a rinse and repeat and another failure? So I understand all of that dynamic. And I guess it's probably easier for me to talk about because it's not my pocketbook. It's not my wallet. But I can tell you this. I really think this offseason, you got to make a decision. You got to say, did Lady Vols basketball and the prestige and legacy that was, did it pass away with Pat Summitt, or do we want to continue that legacy?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because I will tell you right now, what is being put on the floor in Thompson Bowling Arena in the Summit blue, orange, and white, if Pat Summitt's statue wasn't anchored down, he'd come across the road and do something about it.
Yeah, you're right, buddy. And you know, my closing point to it is I want all fans out there to watch how Kelly handles the offseason. I think it's very important to watch how she handles the recruiting with her team, but also how she handles her coaching staff. I look for her to make changes to try to turn this thing around in 1 year to show that she's capable of winning, making some drastic changes. Now, if she doesn't make any changes to that coaching staff, you don't see a lot of pizzazz in the recruiting trail, then just sit back and enjoy what you've been watching for the last 5 years, because we're watching reruns in 2024, buddy.
Well, I think it may be episodes that were cut on the cutting room floor, because we're not going to have Key. We're not going to have Rakia Jackson. I would argue we lose probably 6 or 7 additional ball games if it's just not the athleticism of Rakia Jackson. So, no, I think it's even probably the blooper reel next year if there's no coaching staff change. But, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think Danny White has to either give a vote of confidence to Kelly Harper in the coming days, or he's going to have to make a change, whether that be forcing her to change the staff a little bit or just ripping the Band-Aid off and making a wholesale change. I'll say it on air. I said it via text. I live by a motto that says what should happen inevitably should happen immediately. So if you're gonna fire next year, rock it now. There's already coaches moving. Kentucky fired Kyra Elsie. Again, appreciate everything she did as a Lady Vol. Love Kyra as a player and as a person. But again, Kentucky knew she ain't winning. We're going to get her out. And now they're going after Virginia Tech's coach, who, in my opinion, would have been one on the short list if we would have let Kelly go now. So we'll see how it shakes out. That's why Danny gets paid the big bucks. That's why he's got the orange jacket on game day. So we'll see what Danny White does in that situation. But, Ben, moving on to the heat, if you will, March Madness is just that. We're to the round of 16. Tennessee's still rolling right along. Didn't necessarily have their best weekend last weekend in the opening round or the second round. Felt like we landed pretty well against our opening St. Peter's there. Think they weren't ready for the speed, the physicality, those type of things. So we were able to kind of sleepwalk through that one. Didn't necessarily shoot our best, but ended up getting that one going away. But then the other night, UT versus UT, the real orange versus burnt orange, and we were able to get it done in really you always talk about, this was the performance to remember. Well, this was a performance to forget, but we get out of there, get the victory, 4-point win, 62-58, and as Farmer Fran would say, live to fight another day.
Hey, I'll tell you, man, going on, I'm going to go on with this topic, but you need to open up a T-shirt shop on a beach, buddy, with that you had a few minutes ago. But yeah, this tournament, man, it's been Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I mean, even with Tennessee's play, I mean, broken brackets are everywhere, buddy. I mean, 13 wins for the underdogs, 23 losses for the underdogs. And then every 1 and 2 seed remain. I mean, I don't know the stat, but when's the last time that every number 1 and number 2, there's your Mr. Hyde on the opposite side. Calipari keeps his job. Stevie, Pearl, gets a nice spoonful of medicine. He'd run his mouth and said, why did we get what we got? And then Yale took Auburn to town. Yeah, I mean, Tennessee basketball, man, I've really been this has kind of been the story all year, right, Wayne? Inconsistencies. So I think what I would like to see from this point moving forward is if we are going to be inconsistent, we need to be inconsistent in an area where our opponent is inconsistent as well. And that just so happened to be the case against Texas. Both of us shot very well from the free throw line, and the free throws by Adu at the end of that ball game was the ending factor to where we won. But we were both inconsistent from the field. We were both inconsistent from three-point land. So as we move forward, for us to be successful, it's okay if we're inconsistent, just as long as they're inconsistent in the same statistical area.
Well, so we were 3 of 25 from three-point land against Texas. Huge deficit there. And like you said, ultimately they were just really bad there too. But I think that the saving grace, the feather in the hat, if you will, is the fact that defensively, I think quietly this may be the best team I've ever seen defensively. Wire to wire, start to finish. Yeah, we have 5 and 6 minute droughts of scoring, but the problem is our defense is creating that on the other side of the ball as well. I remember we were near the 10-minute mark in the first half, and the ball game was 8-4. It was not it wasn't a well shooting game for either team, but it was a really good defensive game for us. Held them to 2 buckets. I actually think at the 10-minute mark, they had 2 free throws and a bucket. They didn't even have multiple buckets. So I think Tennessee's saving grace is their defense. I think they're ultimately, even when Dalton's not clicking, which he didn't have a great weekend, I believe his grandfather passed away. He's never made that an excuse. That's been on social media. But he didn't have his greatest games, which in some ways that's good for us a lot of times. But I think defensively we held in there. We're going to score north of 60 points. And at least through 2 games in this tournament, we've been able to hold both opponents under 60 points. So I think that's boding well, especially as we go toward a Creighton that really kind of they mirror us in a lot of ways. They try to force teams into mid-range jump shots, which I really think from an Adu, a Triple J, and even a Dalton Connect, that helps us a little bit. If we can take what they give us a little bit, let their defense work, if you will, and we'll still knock down 2-point shots and hold you out of it on the other end. And so I like our matchup, at least in the round of 16. I really haven't looked beyond that, Ben, just because I'm a one game at a time once it gets to the tournament. Do I think Tennessee at their best is still good enough to beat anybody in this tournament? Absolutely. I love the potential matchup down the road with a Purdue again, because, again, I think playing a team a second time, you at least you know what you're getting out of those guys. So I like that, but I think ultimately the Bluebirds is who's in front of us right now, and that's where we've got to go.
Yeah, and, as I'm bringing the ball up to midcourt and you're coasting down the sideline, you're coming near the elbow, you're going up for that alley-oop, and I toss that long alley-oop to you, you just slam it home, Wayne. You just dunk that ball, buddy, because you made the point on previous podcasts about James and Vescovy and them needing to come together with some pointage. And, they get 11 points in total 48 minutes in that game against Texas. But you talked about the defense as well. And at halftime, I texted you during the half, it was 28-19. So the difference, 9 points, right? You dig into those stats, 11 turnovers by Texas, 9 points for Tennessee off of 11 turnovers. That's 9 points off the turnovers. There's your difference compared to our 6 turnovers, 2 points. So this is a team in Creighton where they don't average as much as we do offensively. I think we average somewhere around 72 to 73 points per game. They're somewhere around 65, I think. But they haven't faced a defense like this. And we haven't faced a guy similar to Ryan. I think it's Kirk Brenner or Kalkbrenner. I might have mispronounced that.
I'll go with it.
He's a 7'1" guy. Okay, so what you're going to have a big man down there like Edey in the Purdue game, and they're going to surround 4 guys around the perimeter, and they're going to play this down low, back out, pass around Gene Hackman, Hoosiers basketball game, and try to get hot like they did in the second overtime game against Oregon. That was the difference. They started out the second overtime and started shooting lights out with Ainsworth and or Ashworth. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a team that can get hot shooting the ball. But I look for us to pick up in areas, and I think it's going to be here's my point that I want to hear your feedback on, Wayne. I think Creighton has to approach this game, and they have to like in the movie Indiana Jones when the Lost Ark, or I can't remember if it's the Last Crusade or whatever, and you had to pick your cup. You had to go back and you had to pick your cup, and if you picked the wrong cup, you were going to die from it, right?
It's tough pill.
So I think they're going to have to go into this game, and they're going to have to go, okay, we focus our defense on Jonas Adu and Dalton Connect. We shut them down, and we roll the dice with Vescovy, James, and Ziegler. Or are they going to go out and say, look, we'll let Connect and Adu go to town on us. They might get 40, 50, 60 points, but we're not going to let Ziegler go on a roll from the arc. We're not going to – Vescovy's been cold. We're going to allow him to continue to be cold unless he proves otherwise. And we're not going to let James get hot. We're not going to let him continue this trend. So I'll be curious to see how they play it.
So, it's kind of funny. I'm looking at Creighton's last 5 games. They're 4-1 in their last 5. Their lone loss was to Kim English's Providence team, which I think is kind of interesting because defensively, I would say Kim would credit Rick Barnes for a lot of things that he probably puts on the floor there at Providence. So I think that'll be interesting. But here's a hot take for you. If I'm Creighton, if I'm their coaching staff and I watched Mississippi State, I watched Kentucky there to end their season, regular season, and then, of course, the opening loss in the SEC tournament, I turned Dalton Connect loose. I let him get his. Let him get 40. Let him get 45. Because what happens when Dalton Connect is exploding? Everybody else goes to sleep. And so, to me, that's my biggest fear. I feel like if Dalton Connect has 35 or 40 points, we're going to be in bad shape. Like we need Dalton to hit those shots like with somebody in his face just to fire everything up and then kind of cool off for a minute. Make Adu hit a little jump hook, send a walk in there to punch somebody in the face. We need everything working. But I'll tell you, if anybody on their coaching staff, Creighton's coaching staff says, I'm going to slow down Zakai Ziegler from driving to the basket, get your popcorn ready is all I can tell you. Because ain't nobody slowing him down. He is scared of no one. He's never seen a defender too tall to go against. He may go in there and get swatted out, but you're going to have to slow down a quick as a hiccup kind of player. And I'll tell you, tenacious is a word that I would put on Zakai Ziegler. This tournament, defensively, he's been a pest. Both broadcast crews called him that against St. Peter's and against Texas there the other night. They said he has been an absolute pest. And it's because he goes baseline to baseline, side court to side court. There is nowhere where you can just breathe and dribble the basketball. He's going to come find you and take it away from you. And so I think the mental game that's created helps us. I think Dalton necessarily not playing his best game in the opening weekend. He feels like he has something to prove. And then I hope Vescovy and James understands this ride's coming to a stop. Whether we win it or we don't, this is the last ride for those two guys, and they need to do something with it. And then Adu just has to understand his is very simple for me. You do a really good job rebounding, you do a really good job boxing out, but go to the basket strong and hit your free throws. I really think he can be a big-time big guy if he just understands how big he really is. But yeah. No, I like our approach. I like the fact that we struggled a little bit in the opening weekend. I like that Creighton won and they're the higher seed. I think that keeps us mentally sharp because we're unfortunately a team that'll play to the number next to our opponent. And that 11 that Oregon would have been, I feel like would have been a trap for us. And so I like everything that we're presented with. It's just now can we show up to the ball and actually put the slipper on? We don't know.
Yeah, you hit every one of my keys to the game this weekend.
Like we talked at work or something.
Yeah. And just to kind of stress what you said to back it up, what we're talking about here, is the 3-pointers in the opening game against St. Peter's. We shot 45%. We shot 46% each half from 3-point land. And then we go into Texas, we shoot 7% in the first half, 16% in the second half. You flip over to free throws. Free throws, we shot terrible free throws in the first half against St. Peter's, and we shot lights out. Lights out against Texas, 87% in the first half, 80% in the second half. And then the stat to me where I'm confident, I'm not concerned. A lot of fans you flipped over the game and you watched the end of the Creighton-Oregon game, and you just go, ooh, man, this team is shooting lights out, okay? We didn't watch the first half of that ball game. We didn't watch the second half of that ball game. We were locked into our ball game. It was toe-to-toe basketball, okay? And it got to where even in the first overtime, it looked like Oregon was going to win the game. And they go into second overtime, and right out the gate, Creighton just hits 2 massive 3-pointers. Oregon makes a couple turnovers, and then they just took off. I mean, the 2 3-pointers out the gate to go up 6 points, and the turnover by Oregon really put them ahead. So Tennessee fans are coming in going, ooh, man, this is kind of nerve-wracking. We're playing Creighton. Well, here's the point total I want everyone to think about. Again, I alluded to it. I didn't give you the exact number. Tennessee average points per game, 79.1 to the Blue Jays, 69.5. That's a 10-point difference on average. You have one team that plays in the SEC, one team that plays in the Big East. That's a huge difference. That's not just a 10-point difference in the SEC. That's 10-point difference in lesser competition. And typically, if you're points on average, there's quite a few ball games where you're scoring 40 points in a ball game against a team that isn't as defensively strong as Tennessee. So Tennessee is coming into this ball game. You got to think now. We've had games where we shoot 60 points in a ball game like we did against Texas, but it's not common for this offense to come out and shoot like that. It's more common that Dalton Connects gets his 40, and a couple guys pick up the slack, whether it be Meshack, Vescovy, or James. So I'm confident, guys. You can tell, brother.
I like our matchup. 57.8% of America has picked Tennessee to win this matchup. I'll ride with them. An interesting number here is the over and under point total. It's 144.5 right now. Tennessee favored by 2.5 points on the docket. Honestly, if I'm going to ride on either side of that coin, I probably take the money line. Give me the 2.5 points in Tennessee. 144.5 is not. A lot of people's like, oh, that's 73 per, right? Or 73 and 72, however you need to work that. But here's my problem. I don't think it's out of this world for Tennessee to score 80. My opinion. But with a 69-point average, you're right there at it, right? And at Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken, has held more than 2/3 of their opponents this year under their season average. So let's say 80 and 65. That's 145, but I don't know if it's a little too rich for my blood. I'd probably just take the points.
Yeah, and you're sitting there. If you're saying that you're going to take the under, you're saying that both Tennessee and the Blue Jays are going to score under their typical average that they score in basketball in a playoff game. And to me, I don't see that. I see Dalton Connect coming out. And here's the other thing I want Blue Jay fans to think about. This defense has had 1 week off. It's had 1 week off to recover, to go back out there and play with their hair on fire like they did last week. So
yeah, and if I'm Coach Rick Barnes, I got the desk on the court like he normally does, and I'm sitting here going, guys, we're going to Detroit, we're going to the Motor City. Let's leave it all up there. If we come home and we're done, well, let's make it because they were good enough to beat us, not because we didn't win.
Yep.
And I think that's that's been the Achilles heel a lot of times is every, at the end of the season, we can always say, well, if we'd have just rebounded better, if we'd have just shot better free throws, if we wouldn't have let the point guard go off for Purdue a couple years ago, Loyola Chicago, all of those moments, we can wash that stuff clean if we can get to the Elite Eight for just the second time in school history. And, the cool thing is once you get to the Elite Eight, you're just one win away from a Final Four. I mean, there's just a lot on the table this weekend for Tennessee, and I hope we're still as optimistic and as happy as we are right now about the future of this. Honestly, maybe one of the better top-to-bottom basketball teams we've ever seen at Tennessee. I think there's argument to be made there. Dalton Knecht still cementing his legacy, putting together hopefully what's a magical run here in the next week or so.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it. I'm excited to see how it plays out, and I hope we're celebrating next week, buddy.
We can only hope, but we've kind of pushed the envelope a little bit close here. We are going to talk a little Tennessee baseball, probably not as much as we had planned. They did get the victory there this past weekend, kicking and screaming. They get the win this Sunday. Had to go to a rubber match again, but unlike the previous week, really from Jump Street there Sunday, took the reins of that baseball game and took it out of the hands of the Rebels pretty quick. And I say that because I was nervous. Going to another rubber match, I'm like, we can't go down 2-0 to open SEC play. Found the bats Sunday, and then again found the bats last night against Tennessee Tech, blew them out, run ruled them, which to me is a bigger deal given the fact that the Golden Eagles have had our number the last couple of years. But like Tennessee's bounce back, if you will, kind of tale of the same thing that happened the opening weekend against Alabama. You win Friday night big, you squeak out you basically fall apart in the bullpen on Saturday and let one get away from you, and then you go to a Sunday game. The difference in the two weekends, this one at our place, which I think ultimately helped us, and then we just we got the momentum and never gave it up.
Yeah, interesting that in the Ole Miss series on Game 1 and Game 3, you had 15 runs, 13 hits, and 1 error, both on Friday night and on Sunday. Tennessee has the same line score for both of those ball games. The power is there. We are hitting the baseball very well. We've identified the 9. I think what's great is that we've identified the 9 players to play at each respective position. We've identified that Villanueva is going to be the DH. He's going to provide that power. Curley stepping up at shortstop. I think what we have to look at as fans and kind of be patient with, because we dealt a little bit with this last year with Dollander and Burns, is they're trying to solidify one of the rotation spots right now.
Sure.
You've got Cowsey and you've got Snead that are pitching very well in their first day and third day pitching roles. Day 2, Drew Beam giving up the 4 runs early in the ball game, us trying to come back. A.J. Russell still appears to be struggling to recover from an injury.
To be a starter. I think we talked about it off air. He's right now, maybe it's still recovering, but he's about a 25 pitch guy. He's really not he doesn't have longevity right now. So I think they dabbled in that Saturday, bringing him in relief.
Yeah, he gave up the 4 runs and 6 walks. I mean, just a couple of those were intentional walks, but I mean, and it's not, and we've talked about it in previous podcasts, I think last year, but when you're watching Beam and you're watching A.J. Russell, you're seeing the catch start, this part of the zone, and you see it go like this, or you see it up here and it goes down like this towards the middle of the plate. So I think it's just something that we have to be patient as fans and kind of see where the season takes us. And I think once Vitello and Anderson figure out who that day 2 starter is, I think it's going to be a very, very good baseball team, especially with the way Sechrist pitched the other night. And Benke's looking good out the bullpen. So a lot of things to look forward to.
Yeah, and I think
baseball fans.
Yeah, and I think, you look at it and we talk about having to solidify some things. We're 2 series into SEC play. So we had a really good run in our non-conference slate, won 15 in a row there going away, then got to a 17-win mark before we got knocked off by Alabama. But I'm sitting here going, sometimes it's hard to create a spark to be able to hit the baseball. We've got the spark, we've got the fire. We've just got to have an extinguisher on the mound that cools the other team off. And so to me, the bullpen and the volume of arms that Frank Anderson has at his disposal, it's kind of a puzzle piece right now. We've just got to figure out one. I think one thing that we could improve on, and I don't know if this is as a coaching staff or what, is knowing when to draw that rope.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. I mean, we did it with Burns, last year, maybe 2 years ago even, where it's like, hey, man, we're good. Oh, he's starting to falter. And you're like, oh, that's it. That's going to be a good outing for him. That's going to be his last inning. They roll him out there the next inning, and he gets lit up. I mean, he's Clark Griswold's Christmas tree on steroids. Like, things are not going well for him. And then we start to pull him. And so confidence is that question mark at that point. All things are really in disarray right there. So I think we could work on knowing when to pull the trigger. There's nothing wrong if he gets, if he goes in there and he walks the guy, hits the next batter, bring in volley fingers. Old Kirby Cannell can get you out of a jam. He's not a multi-inning guy very much, but in general, for his 19 years he's been on staff, he can get you out of a jam.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, going back to the Alabama game, you and I saw it. Snead was in there in a game that we had to win, and before he gave up the home run to where Alabama took a 3-run lead on us as a multi-home run shot, he gives up a ball that's hit out in left field, and we saw the play that was made out there by Dreiling. Dreiling goes up against the wall and has to make a heroic catch to keep us up 5-4. Dreiling goes back, makes that catch, almost out of the ballpark shot. Next guy comes up, jacks a home run, doesn't matter. So, yeah, to your point, anybody watching the game, I think that's the part that what you're alluding to, Wayne, is, and what I talked about there a few minutes ago is when you start to see that mitt move, and you start to see the pitcher not locating the pitches, that's exactly what that hitter wants to happen. And when it starts going across the middle of the plate, it doesn't take much for these guys to hit it out of the ballpark.
Yeah, and these are, I think, the kind of, what am I trying to say? We have a lot of things to be happy about in Tennessee baseball. So I don't want anybody to watch this hour podcast and go, do these guys like anything? So I don't think that's where we're at. We understand that Tony, talking about Kelly and lowering the floor, Tony's raised the floor.
Oh, he has. Yeah.
I remember when you could walk over to Lindsey Nelson on a weekend series, Kentucky, Florida, anybody who was top notch at the time, $6 tickets, $4 tickets. They had Stimulus Tuesday. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Where you could go in and you could get a $2 ticket, $2 hot dog, $2 drink. $2 Tuesday. And it's not like that anymore. Laura wants to take the boys to a ticket or wants to take them to a ball game. And I'm like, I don't know that I can afford.
Yeah. Oh, looks like you hit the mute button, buddy. You hit the mute button.
That's weird. I don't know where you got. How far did you get along in the?
It just turned on a few minutes ago. You're about to bring it home, buddy, and it just flickered on.
So, did you hear my Stimulus Tuesday?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, the start of it.
So I'm talking about, so Tony Vitello has raised the floor for Tennessee baseball. He has definitely expanded what we expect out of that. He's done a lot of great things and ultimately made multiple trips to Omaha. So I am not by any means on my couch in this room trying to say I know anything more about baseball than Tony Vitello. Right. But I think we understand as fans that have seen the bad, and then even you that have seen when we used to be good, I think we just understand how close he is. Yeah. I mean, he's a couple pitchers longevity-wise. He's a couple, guys getting hot at the right moment, top of bottom of the lineup, really kind of not allowing teams to pitch around anybody. I'm saying all that to say that's where we're at. We are not a team that is hoping to make the SEC tournament anymore. I remember in those Todd Raleigh years and those Dave Serrano years where it's like, man, we got to sweep this last team or we don't make the SEC tournament. I remember those days, and those are gone. But we are literally we're probably a day 2 starter away from being undefeated in the conference and probably being a top 2-3 team in the country. We're number 5 now.
Yeah, and to build off what you're talking about, Wayne, last year LSU won the College World Series, right? The year before that was Ole Miss, if I'm correct. Well, that Ole Miss team from 2 years ago that won the College World Series, we scored 38 runs, or maybe check me on that, fact check me, 35 runs on a weekend series. We
at their place.
Yeah.
At their place.
And I'm telling you that right there. So trust in Tony, trust in Frank Anderson. But to your point, Wayne, there's things as fans that, and there might be justification for why they leave guys in as long as they do to salvage other arms in the bullpen that we're not aware of. But this team is well coached. They're playing for their coaches. They're playing for one another. And I think where we're a little bit further along than where we were last year is, like I said, we've identified the 9 guys that are going to fill the positions. There's 9 players that are going to fill those positions very early on in the season. So now we just have to figure out top to bottom what's the best lineup when we face our opponent. But we've got our DH identified. Cal Stark is a defensive catcher. He will not be a starter because he can't hit the way that Peebles can hit. So,
right.
So I like where we're at, and I'm very excited about the series coming up against Georgia, and then it won't be long, guys, and we'll be playing LSU. So let's get ready, huh?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think in a lot of ways, I'm hoping for a little bit of matchup in Arkansas. Try to figure out if I can get, because Tony without a mask on, we may be able to read some lips and understand he and Dave's his true feelings. So, but no, it's a good problem to have. In a lot of ways, I told Jackson and Neela, my 2 little boys, these are what we'll call at some point the good old days. Tennessee football is coming back. Tennessee baseball's hot. Tennessee basketball's hot. It probably makes Kelly Harper's situation look a lot worse. But we're just trying to get it all together. I mean, track and field's doing well. Swimming's doing well. If we had a gymnastics team, it would be doing well.
Softball's doing good, yeah.
Softball's killing it. I mean, legitimately doing some crazy damage on some people. But we've got it all put together. And so to me, it's a good time to be a Tennessee fan. I never turn on the TV, see this logo, and think we're going to lose. And I can't say that I've always been in that situation. So it's a good time to be a Vol. Good time to talk a little sports. We've run it over the hour mark, so I'm gonna cut it short here. I'll cut it long, cut it short. But Ben, as always, appreciate you taking some time, talking it out with me, and again, bringing the stats. You're the one that numbers don't lie, man.
Well, I'm happy to bring the stats, and I'm going to partner with you on that T-shirt shop on the beach, brother.
Well, I'll be the creator. You be the printer, because I don't really me and machines don't always see eye to eye. But Ben, we'll do it again next week. Hopefully, we're talking about an opportunity to make history for Tennessee basketball. We'll have hopefully an update as far as either vote of confidence or moving on with Kelly Harper, and then we'll know the series results from Tennessee and Georgia on the diamond. So for Ben Metz, I'm Wayne Kaiser. If you like what you listen to, hit that subscribe button and check out some of our older podcasts and wait patiently for next week's broadcast. But if you didn't like it, thanks for listening today, and wish you the best moving forward. But until then, take care, be safe, and that's right, grind on.
Grind on.